everyone. It's Friday, July 3rd, 2021. We are here with the wonderful Dr. Sailesh Rao, founder of Climate Healers. And this is Plant Powered and Extraordinary Life virtual meetup series. I'm Nancy Posnack, and I do this through my business called BotaniCuisine, Plant Source Dining Outreach. So here we have Sailesh Rao has produced many documentaries about the far-reaching impacts that our food choices have on every aspect of the environment, including the land, the air, and the seas. And his motto is transform yourself and transform your world. And together we can bring about the greatest transformation in human history. So Dr. Rao will be explaining us more about that. He also, through Climate Healers, is hosting another Vegan World 2026 Convergence. And these are live, online, interactive series focused on designing a new system of normalized nonviolence to live in compassion for all and to reverse climate change so desperately needed, because we're in quite a pickle right now with the destroying the environment and all of the things that accompany that. Dr. Rao has a position paper called Animal Agriculture is the Leading Cause of Climate Change. It's published in the Journal of Ecological Study 2020 to 2021. And in this paper, Dr. Rao proves that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, responsible for at least 87% of greenhouse gas emissions annually. Yikes. And we'll be providing information on how to register for that. So welcome, Dr. Rao. Thank you
Thank you,
so much
Nancy.
for your generosity and time and spirit in being with little old me in Baltimore, and you're all the way out in Arizona. It's pretty amazing. And I know you don't live in a forest. I know that's your virtual background.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
And so can you share with us first a little bit about your vegan journey, how you transformed into living this way?
Yeah. So my vegan journey actually started with climate change, and so I was working on Ethernet at that time. I'm an engineer, a systems engineer.
Right.
I worked on digitizing the internet communications infrastructure back in the 90s. And then in 2005, I was working on making it run 10 times faster. So I was working on 10 gigabit Ethernet.
Ah,
And I was getting more and more disillusioned with my work because it had become very political. The internet was no longer a collegial group of people looking for solutions. It had become very political and money oriented. And it was,
wow.
anyway, it was
Right.
something that I was getting disillusioned with anyway. And then I came home one day and I saw Al Gore's presentation on TV and I was so shocked. I told Janie, if half of what he's saying is true, I feel like I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, if you think it's that important, why don't you study it? So I did that. And within 3 months, I realized it's far worse than what Mr. Gore was saying. So I wrote to him and I said, how can I help you? Okay. That's how I got introduced to climate change. And then, I was doing my research on the different aspects of what causes climate change. And the UN Food and Agriculture Organization had just published a report called Livestock's Long Shadow
Yes.
in 2006. And it said that animal agriculture is responsible for 18% of greenhouse gas emissions.
Huh.
So that shocked me. And so during the training with Al Gore, I asked him a question. I said, if the world goes vegan and we bring back the forests that we cut on the land that we are using for animal agriculture, can we not reverse climate change? Okay, so that was my question. And he turned to Roy Neal, his chief of staff, and he said, how did this guy get in here?
Ah, ah.
So it was clear that he didn't want to answer it. He didn't want to go there. And so that triggered my curiosity even more. And um, I started studying it more in depth. And then, I came across all these papers saying that um, consuming dairy does not cause such a huge impact. It was just a minimal impact
Whoa.
over and above veganism, right? Going vegan.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So I was a dairy consumer at that time. I was a vegetarian, right? So I thought, oh, my lifestyle is not that bad. It's just a little bit worse than going completely vegan. And so I bought into that myth, right? And then in 2008, I went to this village in India and I saw what was happening to the forest there because it was in a state called Rajasthan, which is in the northwest of India. So it borders the Thar Desert. So the desert is almost up to that village. And so this village was in the hills that separate the desert from the mainland. Okay. And those hills were getting desertified,
Oh, wow.
meaning you can see that the forest was dying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to this one place in the village where they had protected 250 acres of common land, and you could see a fence. To the right of the fence, it was lush green forest,
Right.
and to the left, it was barren land with hardly any vegetation. And to the left, I could see all these cows walking around eating up the grass. Okay, these old cows, and they were all dairy cows.
Right.
So then I realized that I had been fooled about the impact of dairy. That there is such a thing as local sensitivity analysis versus global sensitivity analysis, and this is what we do as engineers. We do sensitivity analysis to figure out what is the right thing to do for our solutions.
Dr. Rao, could you explain what sensitivity analysis means?
Yeah, it means making a change in some variable and then checking what happens, and based on that determining uh, what is the right thing to do at a given time. Okay, so this is how what engineers do. So we are always asked to solve problems, right? This is what engineering is about, solving problems.
Right.
Okay? And to solve a problem, you have to analyze the problem, and you have to first figure out what is the local sensitivity of that problem. Okay, I mean, meaning for any change you can do. Let's say it's about not eating dairy, right? If I don't consume dairy, what happens to the ecosystems
Right.
or to the environment? And so when you do a local sensitivity analysis, you say one person is going to switch from consuming dairy to going vegan. And then you figure out what will happen to the environment based on that switch. Okay. And when you do that, you get a certain answer as to what the impact is. And that answer depends upon how you allocate the
Mm-hmm.
impact of the cow to its dairy production, to its beef production, to its leather production, to its all these other products that you get out of a cow, right? Because a cow is like a substance for us. We
Yeah.
treat it as a substance from which we are getting all these resources, right? And so
Right.
that's how they were doing the analysis. So it was basically being split up. The impact of the cow was being split up between its dairy production, between its beef production, between its leather production, and so on. And when you do that, um, the uh, impact of dairy does not seem that big because it's only one person shifting from dairy to
Right.
vegan, right? But when you do a global sensitivity analysis, what you do there is you say everybody on the planet stops consuming dairy. Okay, so everybody on the planet was let's assume that everybody on the planet is vegetarian, and then everyone stops consuming dairy. Then what happens? Okay, and it turns out that if you assume that everybody on the planet is lacto-vegetarian, that itself is enough to destroy the planet.
Oh my God.
Why? Because that's what I realized right there, in that village, because I saw it right there in front of my eyes. Because if everyone was lacto-vegetarian, no one wants to eat the cow. Because that was my reason for being lacto-vegetarian. I didn't want to hurt the cow. I was just going to consume the milk of the cow. I don't want to kill the cow, right? And that's what I had bought into that
But
story.
all the cows in dairy are killed. They're slaughtered.
Exactly. I kind of said to myself, we don't do that in India. And
Right.
sure enough, in that village, they were not doing that in India,
What do they
in that
do
village.
instead?
They let the cows live out their lives, right?
Oh, right.
And these cows, these were old cows walking around eating up the forest. So I realized that if everyone went lacto-vegetarian, the forest will be completely dead, you know, because no one wants to kill the cow, so the cow population would proliferate.
Right.
So I just wrote a paper about that. It's called the ethical vegetarian myth.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on our website now. But
Yeah.
anyway, that was my realization. I realized I had fooled myself with a local sensitivity analysis data from a local sensitivity analysis. And as an engineer, I ought to have known that because when you do a global sensitivity analysis, you see something very different. And that is much more accurate about the impact of your consumption to do a global sensitivity analysis. You have to assume that everyone is consuming the way you're consuming
Right.
and then see what the impact is. And then you have to say, if everyone switches from the way you're consuming to some other way of consuming, what is the impact? And that difference gives you a global sensitivity of that particular action.
Wow.
Okay. When you do a global sensitivity analysis on climate change and on the factors that cause climate change, you will suddenly discover that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, which again comes from that
Powerful
kind of
thinking.
analysis,
Right.
right? But as in, I mean, most scientists don't do that because they're not about solutions. They're not looking for solutions, whereas engineers are looking for solutions. And to do solutions, we have to do this
Right.
kind of sensitivity analysis.
Now, what are the data? I was in the impression you were talking about sensitive analysis. Why I'm hearing that, like, there's different data points, there's different things that you collect data on, right?
Yeah, you look at the data and then you say what this data corresponds to the current situation, right?
Right.
First of all, you look at the data and then you look for consistency in the data. This is how you do engineering analysis. So if there is inconsistency in the data, you figure out why there is inconsistency, and you'll discover that people are hiding things when you
Oh,
do that. Okay. So I found a bunch of things like that people are hiding, especially the UN Food and Agriculture Organization
yeah.
has so many discrepancies like that in its data.
Yeah.
And so it's clear that the industry is very much
Sure.
in that organization, and they are tweaking stuff. You can see that in the data itself. For
Right.
instance, if you look at the land use of the planet, and the UN is the keeper of all the data. Okay, so the UN is basically telling us what is the land being used for. And the UN Food and Agriculture Organization tells us how much of that land is used for grazing, how much of that land is used as forests, and so on, is still forests and so on. And if you look at their data, you'll notice that between 1950 and 2018, the extent of the grazing lands has not changed. According to them, the grazing
That's
lands will remain the
impossible.
same.
That's
I
impossible.
know. And I said, wait a minute. I
Huh.
mean, how,
Ever
how is
hear
it
about the
possible?
Amazon?
Yeah, how is it possible that between 1950 and 2018, we have not changed the extent of the grazing lands, and simultaneously we have tripled the beef production, the quadrupled the dairy production, quadrupled the mutton production. I mean, all these animal foods we have, have grown by factor of 3 to 4, according to the UN FAO itself.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
so this is why when you try to hide data, it's difficult because there are all these other places where you have to also tweak. If you don't do it, we engineers can figure this out.
But the average person looking at those articles wouldn't.
Wouldn't be able to do that. That's right. So I looked at that and I said, wait a minute, it cannot be true. So how is that? What are they hiding? Where are they hiding it? And then I discovered how they do it. So if you look at all the deforestation patterns on the planet, you will see that deforestation happens and they leave little clumps of trees when they're deforesting forests, when they're cutting down the forest. They
Yeah.
leave little clumps of trees everywhere. And why do they do that? Because then, they have a convention in the UNFAO that any grid, any 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid that has at least 10% tree cover is classified as a forest grid.
Oh no.
So they're chopping down 90%
Oh
of the trees
my gosh.
in dense old growth forests,
Yeah.
and they're pretending it's still a forest. Okay, so this is how they have been fiddling with the data.
Yet they came out with livestock's long shadow.
Right. Which said it's 18%, right? So now that itself alarmed me. And
Right.
so I went vegan in 2008 when I saw what was happening in the forest. And then in 2009, I saw this Goodland and Anhang's report that said it's actually at least 51%, at least 51%. Okay.
Right.
And the way they did that, the way they calculated that was by fixing the problems in the FAO's analysis.
Oh.
Okay, so they
That number was also promoted by Cowspiracy earlier on, wasn't it?
well, Cowspiracy had both numbers. We didn't say which was correct. We just had both numbers there.
And you helped produce that movie too, didn't you?
Right. I was one of the executive producers of the movie.
Right.
But uh, that number was there in the movie when I came on as executive producer. And when Leonardo DiCaprio became an executive producer, his team went through the movie and they were trying to get that number out, 51%. And I said, no, we have to keep it there because to
Wow.
me, it is the correct number. Why? Because the UNFAO had made a lot of mistakes, okay? And Goodland and Anhang had corrected those. And then they had included two other things. They had included the respiration contribution of animals.
Okay.
Because they said the animals are the farmed animals are an excessive biomass that we put on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, so because they are 4 times the biomass of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago. They're like
But
huge.
farmed animals are 4 times the mass
Uh-huh. Of
of
all
wild
the
animals.
wild animals.
Pre-industrial, then it would be pre-industrial.
Yeah, from 10,000 years ago. So
Oh,
meaning you look at the pristine earth and you count, you estimate how much was the weight of the animals then.
oh, okay.
And then you look at how much is the weight of the animals today. The farmed animals
Okay.
are 4 times the weight. Okay.
I know people like to think eating animals is natural, but there's nothing natural about it, the way, at least the way it's done, nothing.
There's nothing natural about farming a whole bunch of animals.
No.
No one really does that. No other species ever does that, right? They don't farm animals like this and eat them, So and so we are raising not only it's 4 times the weight, but they actually eat the equivalent of 9 times their weight, the weight of the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago. They're actually eating almost more than twice as much food as any normal population of animals. Because these animals are all very young animals. Because we kill them as babies, okay, literally. About 1/10 of their lifespan, we kill them. And so because they're very young animals, they're eating way more food than any other group of animals would do because they're growing really fast.
And they've been genetically modified and
right
to purposely grow super, super fast,
right
super big, super fast, at great suffering on their.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying that if a human baby grew as fast as a chicken does, compared to the lifespan of a chicken and the lifespan of a human, it's like having a 1-year-old human baby that weighs 500 pounds.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So it's that bad, okay? And so for a baby to grow to 500 pounds, the baby would not weigh so much to start with, right? So you have to feed the baby so much food.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so this is why the actual biomass, the biomass that we need to be considering of our farmed animals is that they are 9 times the biomass of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago.
Wow.
Okay. This is why their breathing is not a natural thing, that you say, well, the breathing corresponds to the photosynthesis that the plants, so the plants were just sequestering carbon, the animals ate it, and it's all balanced. No, it's not balanced. Every year there's more and more being taken away from the land. Right? It's unbalanced. It is tremendously unbalanced, especially when you cut half the trees on the planet. Okay.
Oy.
So Goodland and Ananga counted that. But there was a lot of controversy about it. Hey, you're counting the breathing, and if you count the breathing of the animals, you need to count the breathing of the humans too. Yeah, go ahead and do it. It's not, and you'll discover that humans don't breathe as much as these animals. They are
Well,
like 9 times your biomass. You know,
they're like 7.5, close to 8 billion of us now. And
right? Even
any given year now, there's on the land animals, what is it, like around 70 billion land animals?
80 billion who are
80
killed, who are
were
killed.
killed. Yeah.
So at any given point in time, there are about 30 billion land animals.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Uh, because they are raised and killed very quickly. So in the span of a year, you're killing about 80 billion. This is according to the UNFAO. By the way, all UNFAO data is now suspect, if you ask me. I wouldn't use it as an engineer. If I would be looking for more neutral sources than these data points.
Wow.
Okay. Um, because they're not trustworthy. They're fudging data. You can see that.
Well, unfortunately, in the world, the perception is that they are very trustworthy.
Yeah.
I've gone to
Well,
the site many times, and they probably have some things of value on their site as well. But I actually spoke to someone from there. I called and got a hold of them, and
hmm,
I asked them point blank, why are you promoting some of the poorer countries that are getting wealthier to eat animals
hmm,
at this point, knowing what you know? And he said, well, people have to have a choice. And I said, well, these people are really poor. He
hmm,
said, wouldn't it make more sense to send them lots of lentils and grains rather than,
right.
animals that have to feed and take care of? And then the conversation was over.
Yeah, they're stuck in the current system. It's a systemic problem. The system is based on exploiting animals.
Right.
If you cannot exploit animals, how can you exploit people? See, it's a system that's based on colonialism. Okay, it's based on racism. It's based on all these isms that we are fighting are built in. They're all systemic. Okay, they're systemic, and the
Right.
foundation of that is the exploitation of animals and
Really?
exploitation of nature. Because if you cannot exploit animals and nature, how can you exploit other people?
Oh, I bet people would find some way to do that.
Well,
But they
it's
do, they
yeah,
do.
but it's
But
tough, right? So
that
if
whole
you
system of exploitation and oppression, that when we lift ourselves out of that, it becomes, like applied to everyone. So I
yeah,
totally agree that when we stop exploiting animals, it will go a long way in terms of
right.
stop exploiting people too.
So this is why I see veganism as completely outside the system, meaning it is demanding that some of the axioms of the system. So when I say axioms, I mean these are the foundations of the system. The system is built on these foundations. Axioms are something that we take as truth. You don't have to examine them anymore. They're true to you.
Okay, right, right.
Okay. And so the two axioms that our system is built on are the axiom of consumerism, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of desires in human beings.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And this is an axiom in the current system, because this is why you see billboards everywhere, you
Hmm.
see ads everywhere, and they're all trying to convince you, consume me, consume this, consume that, and then you'll be happy, right?
It's true. Even the plant-based meats
Right,
goes out because that's what people will buy. That's what it has to taste good. It has to be
exactly. So the
not
axiom of
bad, but
consumerism
yeah,
is
right,
foundational to the system. And
right.
the second axiom that's foundational to the system is the axiom of supremacism,
Ah,
which is that uh, life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. Okay, so that's another axiom that's built into the system.
right.
So if you think about the game of money that we play, the game of money says that if you have money, well, you gain an advantage. Now you can use it to exploit others with that, right? So even though our forefathers said that our creator has given us all a right to life,
Right.
then we teach our children, you all have to go out and earn a living.
Yeah.
So what the heck happened to the right to life?
Yeah.
Suddenly they're telling you, you have no right to life unless you do what the master wants,
Right.
what someone with money wants you to do. Okay, so fundamentally, you're being colonized. So you start off, the colonialism is built into the system, right?
That's
So,
true.
so this is the false axiom of supremacism.
Dr.
And,
Rao, for just the sake, some people might not really have a clear idea of what colonialism means.
hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that, what colonialism means?
Colonialism means that you use uh, whatever advantage you have to colonize the freedom of someone else and to make them do what you want. So enslaving is literally like enslaving someone else. Okay. And colonizing their minds, their bodies, and making them do things that they really wouldn't have done otherwise. Okay.
Right.
So, um, so through the money system, we have created a colonial system. The money system itself fundamentally colonialist
Mm-hmm.
because the currency, the way currency is created in the system, only banks can do it. Okay. So since only banks can create currency, it's whoever owns the banks who have the right to start, to produce new currency and to circulate it, right? So who owns the banks? Well, you go look, you'll see that it's the same four financial holding companies who own all the banks.
Really?
Yeah. And then you go look for who owns these four financial holding companies, you'll discover that they are all um, private holding companies and they don't have to disclose their shareholders.
Oh my God.
So, so
Well,
you
also
have
the
these.
US government can just print more money too.
No, government cannot. See, the
I thought
government has
they did.
given the right to print to these banks and to the Federal Reserve, which is a private company, which is private. Okay,
Wow.
so someone, the government appoints someone as the for the board of governors of the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve chairman is what they appoint, but the Federal Reserve itself is a private company. Okay, so through these mechanisms, the people who really own the world are pretending they don't, are hiding behind this game of money. And we all buy into this game. We are all playing that game, right? Because when we put faith in a dollar, right, or put faith in a rupee, any currency, you're bought into the game. And the game itself is a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
It's an ecological Ponzi scheme, okay, because it starts off by saying that nature is worth nothing, meaning nature has no rights on our own. So you can do whatever you want to nature, right? So which means you see a tree and a tree is worth, say, $1,000 if you just chop it down and turn it into lumber. So anyone who walks by sees a tree, they see $1,000 bill standing around, right? And they say, okay, if I own that tree, I can make $1,000 if I chop it down and sell it.
Right, right.
Same with animals. We own them, which means we can sell them and make money off of them. So we have now colonized the trees and we have colonized the animals, right? So we are now using their bodies and their for our profits, right? So, and this is how slavery also happened, right? So you're not colonizing other people directly. Slavery was a direct colonization. And then
Yeah.
there was direct colonization of other countries, right? Now what is happening is neo-colonialism. It's through the currency system you're colonizing people. So after World War II, what happened was these countries who didn't want to openly colonize other countries decided to give them all independence within quotes. This is not really independence because they're still stuck to the same currency model.
Mhm.
And then they had the Bretton Woods arrangement through which they were colonizing countries, okay, indirectly.
How
Meaning
did
colonialism never really ended.
Right. You said, I wanted to clarify this. You said they wanted to openly colonize other countries. They gave them independence with what? What was that?
with quotes, within quotes. This is independence. It's
Right.
like you're pretending to get independence, right? And
And so what did they do after that? How did they colonize the other countries then actually?
so what they do is through the currency mechanism, they say, okay, you have a currency called rupee in India, and you have to convert it to dollars if you want to buy oil. Okay. So since oil is only traded in dollars, you now have to do whatever the Americans want, because otherwise your rupee will be worth nothing compared to a dollar.
Oh,
So this is how you control people. You control other countries,
oh
right?
goodness.
So,
Wow.
for instance, in India, they know that they need to they export a lot of beef because that is the source of revenue, source of foreign exchange for them.
Right.
If you don't export beef, if you don't, there's nothing else that people want from you. Okay, so
I think every the United States exports millions of tons of beef as well.
right, yeah.
And
So there,
I was shocked right after I went vegan. I started looking up all these data, and I
Mhm.
found like it's kind of a crazy game because we export it and we import it.
Right,
And there's imports of the same thing. It's a very bizarre game, but the numbers were staggering.
right,
So I thought even if everyone in the US went vegan, there would still be factory farms here,
right, absolutely,
probably. However, the US does kind of set the pace for the world. A lot of other countries, although I I don't know how much we're going to hold on to that status after the last few years or so, but so I was thinking like, well, if the US, if people did more and more, and actually plant-based food is booming in the food industry, so it
right.
could happen.
See,
The
what's
rest of the world might follow, but with this colonialism, now I'm thinking how the US can still colonialize other countries and sell these, the meat to them,
right,
and that's what they're doing. Then even the UN, that's probably why the UN was behind, upping the meat consumption in countries that are still being developed,
yeah,
which
yeah.
blew my mind when this person just said that.
Yeah, yeah, they're all about grazing the consumption of animal products because they're all about growing the system, growing the current system, right? Because the system, this any Ponzi scheme will collapse if it doesn't grow.
Right.
Any Ponzi scheme will collapse if it doesn't grow. So this is why they have to keep growing it because they're running a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
Okay, I mean, and you can see, it's I mean, we are all playing like we are all gambling all the time. We are gambling with the stock market.
Right.
I mean, if you make the wrong bets, you're going to lose all your money, and then you'll starve to death and nobody cares. So it's one of those
Yeah.
crazy gambling games that we are playing, right? And it's
Right.
managing our lives actually. I
So
mean,
yeah, so let's go on to climate healers
hmm,
and all the work that you're doing to counter this. This is really an incredible foundation to understand how climate healers has been growing and operating and what the vision and the mission of, climate healers is. So let's talk about that, how juxtapose, what climate healers is doing with this,
right.
and then also the convergence, which is next weekend, which I'm so excited about. I can't wait. I've been to everything that you've done, and so let's go on. Okay,
Thanks, Nancy.
sure.
So actually, the what we are doing now uh, begins with something I observed in this forest that's behind me. Okay, so This is a sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India, in the southwest of India, and I was staying in this sanctuary, and it was absolutely perfect. Everything in nature was just perfectly aligned, right? Every animal was living, and the forest was thriving. So I asked the owners, how did you make this happen? They said, oh, we did nothing. We just tore down the fences of this coffee plantation and gave it back to the animals. And the animals came and dropped new seeds and trees were born.
Right.
So it's basically the animals recreated the forest out of a coffee plantation. I said, what?
Wow.
That's all it takes is just tear down the fences and give it back to the animals and the rest just happens. I said, yeah, that's it. That's all you had to do.
Right.
And then I was watching this elephant who was breaking branches of trees in the forest, right? So I asked the owner, hey, isn't that elephant destroying your forest? I mean, look, she's breaking branches of trees and throwing the branch, eating the leaves and throwing the branch away. And Pamela told me, no, no, no. Everything the elephant does is in alignment with nature. The
Ah,
elephant has no choice but to be in alignment with nature. Okay? Because wherever the elephant broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams and nourishes the underbrush.
oh,
Wherever the elephant walked on bushes, trampled on bushes, that's where new pathways are formed in the forest for all the other animals to use. And then wherever the elephant went and pooped, that's where new jackfruit trees are born. Because the jackfruit seeds are in the poop, along with the manure for a new jackfruit tree.
oh, right.
So the elephant has no choice but to be in alignment with nature. So I said, okay, in that case, we also should have no choice but to be in alignment with nature.
Uh-huh.
So how come we seem to be behaving so badly, right? So we seem to be destroying the planet.
Right.
So when Kimaya was born, my granddaughter, you know, she in one look, she convinced me that we also belong exactly as we are. She just looked at me and she smiled. And that smile, when I saw her smile, I saw her eyes, into her eyes, and she was smiling at me. And I felt like she was telling me, what do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am. And you are a fool for not knowing it. Okay? So I was shocked when I got that. Instantly there was this communication between the baby and me. And
Right.
I was shocked. I said, whoa, I better go back and figure out what is it that I'm missing.
Uh-huh.
And all along, it was staring at me in the face and I was missing it. Okay, I was seeing it. And it took me 5 years to figure out something that was staring at me in the face. Okay, so this is how bad I am, how slow I am. And what it was, once you acknowledge that humans are changing the climate of the planet, okay, you have automatically assumed responsibility for regulating that climate on
Uh-huh.
behalf of all life.
Right.
And then I looked back at the last 10,000 years. That's exactly what we have been doing. For the
Right.
last 10,000 years, the temperature was constant on Earth, roughly the same. And how did that happen? Well, we were cutting down trees and we were pumping up all this CO2 into the atmosphere, and we were keeping it constant. Okay. Otherwise, we would have gone back to another ice age 6,000 years ago. So we prevented an ice age from happening on planet Earth. Okay. And so now we have created all the tools and technologies to be conscious of our role as a climate regulating species. For the first 10,000 years, we were not even conscious of it. We were just doing it automatically. Okay.
Right. Right. Fascinating. Yes.
But now we have reached the limit of doing it automatically. You can't keep cutting down trees, and
Right.
forever.
Right. Too much of a good thing. Yeah.
So we were made to
Exactly.
stop. We found fossil fuels. We were
Right.
burning them up, and then in the process we put all the CO2 into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And now if we bring back the trees that we cut, it won't go back to another ice age because all that fossil fuel CO2 will still be up in the air.
Yeah.
So we have now reached this point where we are being told to become conscious as a climate regulating species,
Right.
right? So, and that was staring at me in the face because once you acknowledge that humans are causing climate change, you already see that, it's there. It's
Okay.
our role, it's there, right? We have no choice. I mean, lions are not going to do it. Elephants are not going to do it. I mean, we are the ones who have to regulate the climate, right? So we have to teach our children how to regulate the climate. We have to teach in high school, when they come out of high school, they should be climate regulators. They should be climate healers. Okay. So that's a new system that we are talking about, a new education system in which, because the current education system is all about how to serve the colonial master.
Yeah.
How do you, extract from nature and build things for the master to enjoy? Okay.
It's really true how when you think about the things you learn in school, they're quite often not the most important life lessons. We
Exactly.
don't learn to communicate. We don't learn about intimacy. We don't learn about, emotional intelligence. There's some schools do teach that, but they stuff all this information in you, forgetting
Right.
that there's really a human being there. And I think the fact that we haven't learned to communicate has really cost us so dearly,
Right.
even especially as vegans, because we want to help facilitate behavior change, but we have no idea how behavior change even works. And so there's, it's something that I've studied, quite a bit. And
Mm.
I think that it's so important. And there's, even among vegans, there's still sometimes a lot of infighting because we don't really
Right.
listen.
Right.
Imagine if you had a course in school how to listen.
Right.
How would that alone would change the world, if people just
Oh,
like,
you're so right, Nancy. I mean, one of the first books I read when I started on this journey in 2005 was the book by Anthony DeMello called Awareness.
ah,
Awareness. It's a great book. I was
awareness, is that the name of it?
yeah, the name of the book is Awareness. I have a PDF of it. If you want, I'll email it to
Oh,
you.
sure. And who's the author again? I'm typing this stuff out. Who's the author?
Anthony DeMello.
How do you spell DeMello?
DeMello.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so he's a Catholic, a Jesuit priest from Goa in India. So what he said was, when you listen to someone, it's much more important to listen to yourself listening to someone.
Ah,
It's much more important to watch yourself. Are you judging what that person is saying
right,
already? Okay. If you're judging, stop it. Just let it be. Let the words of the person you're listening to sink in.
right,
So without judgment. So be an aware listener. Okay.
right.
So that was one of the first lessons I learned, about how to listen to people and
Mhm.
how to listen. That there is something, okay, because if you think that nature is fundamentally perfect, and I was convinced of that, just in this forest, I was convinced that nature is fundamentally perfect, meaning there is a perfection in the system design that's nature. Okay. And as a systems designer, as a systems engineer, I was in awe of nature in this forest. I was just sitting there saying, my God, how, how can anyone engineer something so good,
Yeah,
so amazing, right? Everything fits, everything fits. There is no such thing as waste in nature. Everything, the waste of one is the food for another. And I mean, it's just beautiful. And it was so full of life. This particular sanctuary is so full of life that at night, I could not even hear my sister talk because there was such a loud din of frogs and insects and all with their own unique mating calls. And it was like amazing, right? So I said, if nature is such a perfect system design, it couldn't have made a mistake
right.
in us. And that so we are also part of the same perfection.
Mhm.
And so as a result of that, we are going to transform. So I said, we are going to transform from a narcissistic,
Yeah,
predatory, taker species. So we are now taking from nature, right? So we are a narcissistic, predatory taker species. And we know that, if the only thing you do is take, it's going to end,
right,
right? So we now have to transform from that to a compassionate, climate regulating, caretaker species, the triple C's.
right. I love that.
Compassionate, climate regulating,
Mm,
caretaker species. So the
right,
difference is care. So you have to start caring.
right.
Yeah. And we are going to do it.
Caring is the difference between being civilized or barbaric,
Well,
I
what
think.
we call civilized is actually barbaric.
Oh,
So,
well, I mean, what civilized is supposed to be, right?
right. Yeah.
Because honestly, when I went vegan 7 years ago, I realized that we don't live in a civilized society. I thought we did.
Exactly.
And then I started looking at all these things, and went, wow, okay, we're really in the dark ages.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so this is why I say these two foundational axioms have to switch. So I say that we are in a double Galileo moment in human history
A
because
double what?
Galileo only had to overturn one axiom.
Galileo?
Yeah, Galileo. You know Galileo?
Oh, Galileo.
Galileo. Okay, Galileo. Galileo, he had to overturn one axiom, which is that the sun goes around the earth, right? He had to say, no, that's not true. The earth goes around the sun. And until we agreed that the earth goes around the sun, there could have been no scientific revolution. There could have been no Newton. There could not have been any of this technology that we have today because there would have been no gravity.
Right, right.
Okay. So it's that switch that enabled the scientific revolution.
And that's the difference when we see things from a me perspective or when we broaden our experience and become more objective. And that's what science does, you
Right.
know. And it's the same way people think, oh, animals are here for us to eat and
Right.
use. But when you broaden that, you say, no, they're not here. They have their own purposes. And it's just that me, my, everything revolves around me,
Right.
you know. And I recently started feeling like maybe we're here for them, like you were talking about, like
Exactly.
they're, yeah, as a regular species, maybe they're a part of that ecosystem that we have to learn to protect and not, like you were saying, not just eat and kill and use. And yeah,
Right.
so we're
So
here for them.
exactly. They are our bosses. Actually, they are our bosses. Okay. And they're saying, oh my God, these employees are gone crazy.
Yeah, we don't watch it, they're gonna fire us soon.
They're gonna fire us. Yeah. I mean, if we don't shape up, yeah, we're gonna be gone. So
Yeah.
uh, we are going to shape up. This is why I say nature is a perfect system design. So we're going to shape up. This is why, for me, I start off in any project, like whether when I worked on the internet infrastructure project, the gigabit Ethernet, I started working on it in 1996. And I mean, in earnest, I started working on it in 1999. That's when the standard got done. When I started, I assumed that I have it working, right? That
Right.
because you cannot assume, you cannot start by saying, oh, I don't think it'll work. In which case, you'll never build anything that actually works. If you start off with the assumption it's not going to work, right? So I start off by assuming the world is vegan by 2026.
Okay.
Okay, the world is going to be vegan by 20 because we have no choice but to do it. Okay,
Right.
so if we have no choice but to do it, we're going to do it. We have to do it. So I say, okay, if we assume that the world is vegan by 2026, what do we need to do now to get there?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a how do you do it? It's a how question as opposed to what or where or when or why. All those questions have been answered, right? I
Right.
think the vegan movement has won every argument. Every argument. There is no argument, no rational argument against veganism. There isn't.
Isn't that's true.
Yeah.
And when you hear people making these baseless rationalizations, it sounds so funny. You
Well,
know,
it is. See, I sympathize with that. I
yeah.
understand that.
Right.
Because I remember I used to be addicted to cigarettes.
Yeah,
Okay.
what do you say then? Wow.
Yeah, I was addicted to cigarettes. And when my mother found out, she was she went ballistic when she found out that I was smoking because apparently I didn't know this. She told me this later. I mean, told me this when she found out. She said that I was a twin, and
Oh,
my twin passed away at birth,
oh my goodness.
and that I had a lot of trouble breathing as a baby. And so she said she had to massage oil on my chest to help me breathe. Okay, she had to literally breathe for me with her hands. Okay, I used to get all these attacks, asthma attacks, as a
Oh my
baby.
God.
And she said, "You are smoking? Are you out of your mind?" And she was like, she went ballistic. How much how much effort I put into keeping you alive, and now you're doing this. So anyway, she uh, then kept telling me every call from India to the US, she would tell me, "Have you quit?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Mom, I'm trying. I
Uh,
really am. I'm trying." And then I did try. Okay, I put on patches, I chewed nicotine gum, I did all the things that they told me I could do to get rid of it. And I tried. And every time I felt like I had a biological need for cigarettes. Because when I quit, I felt bad. I mean, after a day, I would feel restless, anxious, all kinds of things, right? And then as soon as I started smoking again, I would feel better. So I thought I had a biological need for cigarettes. Okay. And then in 1997, um, my mother died in her sleep at the age of 60.
Oh my God. Sorry.
There was no warning for us, it's just, she just went to sleep one day and she didn't wake up.
Wow. So sorry.
Okay. I quit cigarettes instantly. I mean, I went to a doctor that as soon as I found out, I went to a doctor and I said, this is the only thing my mother asked me to do. Can you help me, please? I want to quit. And he said, okay, here is this Zyban. He gave me this Zyban, which is like a antidepressant drug. And he said, take it, take 2 pills a day and then continue smoking.
Ah,
And on 40% of the people, the urge goes away. In 40% of the people. So if you're one of the 40%, you'll be happy, you'll quit smoking. I said, okay, I'll try that. So he gave me a prescription for 100 Zyban pills. So I took just 2. One day I took 2
mm-hmm.
and I didn't feel like smoking at all after that.
Wow.
Right?
It calms you down then, huh?
I don't know what happened, Nancy. I really think that I was fundamentally motivated to quit.
Right.
And so that was there all along. So,
Right.
and then, the doctor's thing, it was just a placebo or whatever it was. I just didn't feel like smoking at all. And
Wow.
so I quit. And I went and gave him 98 of those pills and said, you can keep it. I don't need it anymore. You
Wow.
can give it to other patients as in a trial run.
I know in research studies, as much as 30% of people's behavior change is in their mind.
Yeah.
They're going to be given the placebo and they'll still change,
Right.
and
Right.
it's amazing the power of that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The power of that, that event to me, it shook me because I wasn't expecting my mother to die. I thought she would always be asking me to quit, and I'll quit for her. But since I knew that was the only thing she ever asked me to do, and
Right.
that I didn't do it when she was alive, I
Right.
felt obligated to do it. Okay, and I tell this story now to people because I don't want us to wait until Mother Earth dies before
Yeah.
we quit our addictions.
Right.
Okay? Before we quit, because we know that there are these 2 axioms that we need to shift.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 axioms are not serving us well at all. So we are playing a game founded on these 2 axioms. And can we not find the right axioms that are aligned with nature and aligned with the truth and create a game based on those axioms? Yes, we can. Instead of the axiom of consumerism, I say there's the axiom of inner peace, which is the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by looking for it within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And instead of the axiom of supremacism, I call it the axiom of unity, that all life is one family in which we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are.
Beautiful.
Which is Shelley Ostrov's vitality. That's the vitality code, she calls it.
Ah,
So
beautiful.
I say that, the axiom of inner peace and the axiom of unity should be what our game should be founded on. So meaning we have to create a new game, a new currency game, a currency system. Does not have to be a game anymore. We know that we are doing something serious. We are
And
a climate regulating species,
yeah,
right? We don't have to play games anymore.
you've
Right?
mentioned in the past in some of the meetings I've been in that you've been in, where the idea of having people fed, having their basic needs met, and that is so important to and consumerism. You're talking about before how we have a right to life, but then we have to fight to live.
Exactly.
And that doesn't make sense. If we have the right to life, shouldn't we, that's the thing about a plant-based food system. It'd be so easy to have it cost nothing or be free because plants just grow right out of the ground.
Right.
and
Right.
localizing would go a long way. But that's, and then what are the other things that you're covering? There's five different aspects to the convergence, right? Four or five.
Mhm. Right.
Do you want to mention those? Because that's a perfect lead into that. Because the convergence is a way to help accomplish all these things that you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So basically, the five things we are talking about: the new economy, which is creating this new currency system that is based on the correct axioms, right?
Mhm.
Then there is food healers, and the idea there is uh, that all of us are malnourished. I mean, almost all of us are malnourished. Even those who have plenty of food to eat, they're
Right,
malnourished too, because we have a system that's all about addicting people into compulsive behaviors. That's how corporations make money, right? You have to keep coming back for their products, otherwise they don't make money. So they try to addict you into their cola or into their Big Mac or whatever the heck they're trying to sell us,
right,
right?
right,
So they're trying to addict us, and when we are addicted to food, you know, we actually start not getting the nutrition we need.
right,
Okay, so this is why 97% of Americans, I think, don't get enough fiber in their diet. Some 98% or something like that don't get enough potassium. I mean, there are lots of micronutrients that we don't get in our
right.
diet.
And
Even though,
everybody's all worried about out of shape about getting protein from,
right, we get three times as much protein as we need.
I
Okay,
know.
so
And they really should be all bent out of shape about getting fiber and micronutrients and antioxidants and things like that. That should be, that should be a
right,
thing on the menu, an antioxidant section on the menu.
right.
Yeah.
So we have it all backwards, right? So this is why almost every human being is malnourished.
Wow.
Okay, so you look at um, animals in nature. Animals in nature eat straight from nature.
Right.
They eat the fruit or the grains. They basically are doing a whole food diet. That's all they're doing, right?
Right.
And so they can never overeat, and they get all their nutrition because they're directly taking it from nature. We are taking processed foods. Most of our food is processed foods, processed by the industry, and the industry steps in there in the middle, and they're processing it in order to make it more and more addictive so that you keep coming back for their food.
Right. All the salt and the sugar and
Right.
processing things.
So if you
Very
look at the percentage of food that we eat that's whole foods, it's only about 15%.
wow.
Okay. So the rest is all processed food or animal foods. It's either animal foods or processed foods that we
They
eat.
are. People don't realize that meat actually is a processed food.
Yeah, it's highly processed, right? So,
I mean,
and
even if it's eaten right off the animal's body, that people, those animals, the animals that people eat are plant eaters,
right,
right? And people go, oh, but there's certain nutrients that are only in animal flesh that aren't in plants. I say, yeah, that's right. Then how do those animals get it if they're plant eaters? Because their body makes it. So the
right,
few things that you find in muscle that you won't find in plants, are our body makes those, and that's the
exactly,
thing. But that muscle, that tissue that people eat, has been made from plants. It's been
right,
processed through their body. It's
right.
not a whole food, and people don't understand that, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the most highly processed because it takes years. I mean, a year for that to grow, right?
Right,
and
right,
and it is eating all these, and especially in the current environment where the plants have also been contaminated with our
right,
pollutants,
right.
and the animals are then concentrating those pollutants in their bodies, and then we eat those animals, we're going to get even more concentrated in our body, so this is how we get sick, because we have concentrated doses of toxins in our bodies
Yeah,
from the
we're
animal
a very
foods.
sick country. Like 1 in 2 or 3 people is expected to have cancer
Yeah,
and heart disease, and more people have killed every year just by heart disease alone than in the pandemic.
absolutely, absolutely. And heart disease is a foodborne illness.
Yeah.
It's, I
Mhm.
mean, you absolutely don't have to have any heart disease in human
Unless
beings at
there's a
all.
congenital defect, but that's not heart disease.
Right, right,
That's something else. But yeah,
right.
big business.
It's big business. That's what drives it, right? It's the game of money, the Ponzi scheme that we are playing.
Yeah.
that's driving the disease, is driving the death of the animals, is driving the destruction of the planet. Because in that game, it's through death, disease, and destruction that we make money. So that's um, and the game itself is based on fear, because all currency is issued in the form of loans. So when you give somebody a loan, you're telling them, if you don't return that back to me, I'm going to take away your home. I'm going to take
Right.
away your... So you have all this collateral that you pledged to me. I'm going to take it away. So when you pledge collateral to a bank, and let's say you're not able to pay back the loan, you think you can go tell the police, hey, I needed that money more than that guy. No, the police are on the side of the banks. Okay, always. So they are the enforcers of the colonial system.
Right. Can you explain what you mean by game?
Oh,
Let me say game.
a game is a set of rules that we all agree to, and we agree to play it. Okay, when we play it, we actually coordinate our actions.
We
Among
what?
we coordinate our actions as a
Mm.
species.
Oh, coordinator action. Okay.
Yeah, like ants may be playing a game too. I don't know. I haven't looked into ants and how ants
Right.
behave, but maybe they are also playing a game.
They're
Some
very coordinated.
very coordinated, right? So
Yeah.
one ant comes and says, there's food over there. And then every ant goes over there and picks up the food and brings it back.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but we play games like that. And that's how we coordinate our actions among millions and billions of us.
Right.
We tell stories and we play games. Stories like a story of America. That's a story, right?
Yeah.
United States of America. That's a story. Every nation is a story that we told, because there is no really boundary in nature. We built it. We put a line on a map and then we,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
built a wall on it. Right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, there is no boundary in nature.
And
So
who tells the story are the people who are in charge and in power, as we see in the
exactly.
U.S. The history of the U.S. has been so whitewashed, and the whole
Right,
world, you know.
right. So we tell the stories to our children. So we put that in their textbooks. The protein myth is also a story
Yeah.
we told children, right? We told them, hey, if you want to eat protein, protein is found in meat. That's all
Exactly.
we say in the textbooks, right? Protein is found in meat. So people grow up thinking protein is only found in meat.
Right.
Okay, I remember, I had doubts, as a vegetarian, will I get enough protein? And then someone told me, well, milk is just like meat. It's okay. You'll get protein from the milk.
Oh God. Yeah, that's right.
And then when I wanted to go vegan, I was thinking, is there protein in plant foods? And I went and looked up, and sure enough, it was there.
Because the farmed animals, all they eat are plants.
Right? I know.
They get their protein from, right?
Exactly. But you grow up thinking that we are special.
Oh,
We have a
right.
special need. So not all species are the same, right? So
Right.
we think that we only get our protein from animals. And so anyway, this is the story that the industry has put into the textbooks of the planet everywhere.
Right. And one thing I wanted to mention is the chemical and drug industries, enormous investment in animal industries
Mhm.
and in agriculture as a whole, but especially in animals. Something like 70 to 80% of all pharmaceuticals go to farmed animals because there's so many. We're saying like 9 or 10 billion in the US alone, and they have to give them these drugs to and all kinds of stuff to make their bodies viable for sale.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Because we are keeping them in these closed quarters. They don't even move, so and they'll get all kinds of diseases unless you give them these pharmaceuticals. So there is an entire system that's based on this, and this is why it's going to be impossible to fix it from within the system, because the system is not designed for that fix, right? You are asking for a different set of
right,
axioms altogether.
right.
So this is why I say we have to build a new system based on the correct axioms, and
Uh-huh.
then we can play the old game of money, and then you also have to simultaneously play the serious game or the serious system of climate regulation, being a climate regulating species, right? So we have to play the new game. You can call it a game. It's a new game called Aquarius. So that's what we are working on, called Aquarius. Then you can, when you play both games, it's like being vegan in the current model. So when you're
Right.
vegan in the current model, you're kind of getting the corporations to actually give you vegan food, even though they don't want to. Okay, they really don't want to,
Right. They
but you're
are
kind of
now. Yeah.
forcing them because you're saying, "Yeah, I won't eat it unless you give me that." So we have power as consumers and as
Absolutely.
people. We have power,
Abs-
and we are constantly giving it away to our corporations
yep.
or to the government. And so what we can do is take that power back and say that we are now going to create this new game in which we are all treated fairly. You know, the founding principles of America is actually implemented, right?
Right.
That
Right.
all men are created equal. We
Exactly.
all have a right to life,
And we have
liberty.
to change that to all people
Yeah,
are
well,
created equal.
not only all people, it's all beings are created equal, you know.
Right.
Leave them alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All beings are created equal, and we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay,
I love that. Yep.
let's implement that. Let's actually implement that. Let's
Right.
not just pretend. Let's not just create words and then do the exact opposite.
What's truly astounding is the people who wrote that
Mhm.
had slaves.
Exactly.
Some of them still had slaves.
Right.
And that, to me, I think about that a lot, how, our ideals quite often don't measure up to our behavior and our actions.
Right.
And then you were talking about the game we play. We live in a society that kind of forces you, we're stuck in this massive wheel that's going, where even in some of the simplest things we do, our actions are not able to align up with our values because we don't even have that choice to do that.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I can see what you're saying, how we can't fix it within the system. We have to start a whole new system because the very foundation of the system we're in
Right.
is never going to get us where we really should be going.
See, but we understand how to do it now, in the sense that
Right.
engineering is
Okay.
about taking ideals and matching it with what you actually implement.
Ah,
In fact, that's what we do as engineers. We have a specification, an ideal, and then we say, okay, I want to get this cable running 10 gigabits per second or 1 gigabit per second
right,
with at least uh, 10 to the power minus 13, 10 to the minus 14 error rate. So there are all these specs we put in place, and we actually have to meet it. If we don't meet it, you're not done. You keep working on it until you meet it, right?
right,
So so we know how to write down ideals and then create a system that matches those ideals. This is why I say you need to get engineers involved in creating systems and games, because we are trained to do that. I mean, we're not good at at politics and things like that, but we are really good at making things do
work.
what we said
Right,
they're going to do.
right. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So
Tell us more about the convergence. It's 9/17. So let's talk a little bit more about the convergence happening next weekend.
right, yeah, the convergence it happens every 3 months. And next weekend, it's July 31st, August 1st. We have a whole lot of amazing presentations, and we have amazing documentaries that are going to be screened.
Ah,
We have the premiere of a documentary called Animals, A Parallel History, which is the history of animals,
oh, wonderful.
history from a perspective of animals. And so the producer will be there. We'll be doing a Q&A with him on that. Um, and we are trying to introduce that in school curriculums around the world,
Oh,
because we think children should learn about how animals have served us, and then we have to go ask the animals for forgiveness.
all right.
Yeah, so that's going to happen. So the idea behind the convergence is to meet regularly. So we meet regularly with the one goal, one objective, to get to a vegan world by 2026. That's the objective. Okay? And everything we need to do, everything we do in the convergence is towards that goal.
Right,
So, so basically, one of the simplest principles of getting to a vegan world is get every vegan business and every vegan nonprofit and help them meet their objectives
Ah,
beyond their wildest dreams. Then you
wow.
have a vegan world, you know.
Yeah,
So it's a simple, it's a simplistic way of putting it, but
right,
that's the basis of it. So we try to network people, we try to connect with people, and we try to help them get better at what they do.
right,
And so we invite NGOs and businesses to come and talk about what they're doing,
right.
and then we network with them. We figure out how can we make it better for you, right? And so that's our goal in the convergence. And so it's 2 days. Um, and it's one of those things I say, once you join the convergence, you can never leave.
Ha 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 ha.
It's like Hotel California.
Yeah, I've made some wonderful connections through the conversion.
Right?
Now here
So,
you have, I'm on the website, climatehealers.org, and under the tab of, well, anyway, it's under the tab, which it's under like a second or third tab. And then you have heal, human, earth, animal liberation,
right,
and calling all, and you have vegan, you have vitally engaged guardians of animal and nature.
right,
Love that. So this is what I love about climate healers, is that you have that, a doorway of climate healers, but once you get into the climate healers room, it really expands, and it's just what you're saying, transform yourself and transform your world, because we know it needs to be transformed. And
right.
so the four aspects, we have the vegan constitution, the vegan institutions, the vegan infrastructure, and vegan currency. Can you talk a little bit about each one of those? What's the vegan constitution?
So any new world you create will have those four things. So a vegan world will have a vegan constitution, meaning a constitution that governs how we behave towards each other, how we behave towards nature, how we behave towards
Right,
animals, right? So that's what a constitution is. It's just a document that we all agree that we are going to abide by,
right.
right? So it could be very simple. Like like the US Constitution is very simple,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to work on something like that for a vegan world. Okay, so that's my appeal to the legal community to come along, the
Right,
vegan legal community to come along and help us write a constitution, a simple constitution that will tell us how we govern each other, how do we govern our actions. Okay.
right.
Now, but that's tied into how are we going to do the other things? What are
Um,
the vegan institutions?
mm-hmm.
Vegan institutions are uh, ways in which we organize to to promote veganism and to promote the maintenance of a vegan world, right? So it could be institutions that take care of food for us. How do you create food for us, and how do you maintain them? How do you maintain ecosystems? How do you maintain watersheds? So it's really about how are we relating to nature, how are we relating to each other in these
Right.
institutions. And vegan infrastructure, this infrastructure is, basic things like how do we communicate with each other, right? What kind of, we still have an internet. Now, how are we going to create the hardware for the internet? How are we going to create the software for the internet? Or how are we going to create any other means, like transportation, things like that? How will it be all vegan, right? You have to have vegan. Everything has to be vegan. So you can't
Home, building our home.
have
Right.
glue in your cars, right? Things like that. So it's the infrastructure has to be created. So meaning all the vegan businesses, they're all part of this vegan infrastructure that we have to create.
Right.
And then finally, it's the vegan currency. Currency is the main game that we play as human beings. The money system. That's the main game we play, right? Everyone plays that game.
Right.
Everyone who's not out in the forest and living by themselves, as soon as you join the mainstream humanity, you are playing that game,
Right.
right? So now that game should be set up so that uh, it doesn't hurt animals, it doesn't hurt nature by default, right? So we have to create a vegan currency that's based on the correct axioms.
Right. Is that
And
what you call Aquarius?
that's what I call Aquarius. Yeah. So you can see that under the transform tab on the website. And you should see I call it that. I should make that Aquarius. But yeah, I love I love acronyms.
Right.
That is the Homo Ahimsa transformation. But it's really the Aquarius money game is what it's about. So it's a money game in which you start off by saying everyone belongs. Because if you think about the current money game, you
Right.
start off by saying nobody belongs.
Right.
You
Right.
get zero to start with, right? And you better do what someone with money wants you to do.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll get zero. You'll stay with zero.
Uh-huh.
So it's all about hoarding. So people hoard in order to take care of their children and their grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whereas in the new money game that we are talking about, everyone belongs. So you don't have to hoard at all because you're guaranteed to belong. The money just flows into your account automatically, right? So it's a bottom-up money game as opposed to a top-down money game.
That's brilliant.
So it's how do you architecture that, right? So it's architecting the game, and it changes the whole dynamics of how we behave with each other. See,
Right.
like Buckminster Fuller said that if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the
Right.
use of which will change the way they think.
Right. Exactly. That's a cornerstone of education, to empower people.
Right.
Instead of trying to squish them down and force them into a change, give them information and really do with respect and love and conscience. That's how I like to do in my advocacy. I want to help raise people up,
Yeah.
and I approach it from a very positive, upbeat, at point of view, and still being honest about what's going on. But I really do work on respecting people. It's so important to do that.
Yeah. Philip Poland is a great example of that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I just shared something he wrote on his Facebook post,
Ah,
where he said that he met someone who he hadn't he hadn't seen for 30
it,
years.
yeah.
And and that guy said, "Oh, are you vegan?" He saw his his license plate and said, "Are you vegan?" And he said, "Yeah, aren't you?" He said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Wow, I
Thought
would have
you
thought you
were,
were a
yeah.
vegan
Yeah.
because
He
I
really
always thought you
flipped
were a
the whole
smart guy."
conversation around, because the guy was kind of a sneering attitude, was like a derogatory attitude, and it was like, well, he always held him in high regard, and he did. He said, I held you in such high regard. I would have assumed you would have been by now. And it turns out the guy's daughter is.
Right.
It's really mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's like the antithesis of a person that you would never think would go vegan. He was a jet setter. He said he left the world of lobsters and Learjets to
Right.
help with sanctuaries, and he's got something 500 charities that he supports, and him and his wife Trix do amazing
Yeah, I
things.
know. I know.
Really incredible people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great story, though. I love that. I
Yeah.
read it too. Yeah. Well, we have 3 minutes left. Or do you have any parting words you'd like
Oh,
to leave us with?
thank you, Nancy, for this. I really enjoyed this conversation, and
Me too.
yeah.
I enjoyed it too. It's Wendy.
Hey, Wendy. I'm glad you're
Thank
still
you.
here. I thought you were still here.
I got my run in. Got
Awesome.
going.
Awesome.
But it was fascinating conversation. And
Thank you, Andy. Did you
Yeah.
have any
I
questions for
enjoyed
me
it.
or anything?
Is there anything you wanted to share,
Well,
Wendy?
how to be positive.
Yeah.
How to be positive in this world. It's kind of depressing with, when what you're talking about with
Yeah.
just the system is just geared against us. And
Right.
it's like, it's hard to win.
Well, that's what Climate Healers is doing.
Yeah.
It's offering all
Yeah.
these solutions.
Right.
And like I said, I've been to all the events that the Climate Healers done, and I've been on a lot of the Zoom calls, and it's been such a source of inspiration and hope for me, and it has really helped me stay positive, because there can be, when you start looking at all the horrible things that are being done, it can really take you down that dark hole, you know, where you feel like you can't even get out of it. But this is really, it's so wonderful to pave the way forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that program that's coming up, will that be recorded, and is that free, or is that, do you have to
It's free. I
pay
mean,
to
you can,
attend?
It's
yeah,
free if you want to go, but it's only $29 to register. So
Okay.
I went ahead and
It-
registered because I just wanted to support it. But yeah, it can be, there's a offering for free. Yeah.
yeah, you can take it for
it-
free. Basically, it's
Yeah.
you'll get the same thing. It's not like we are going to hold anything back.
But they are recorded. Most of the things are recorded, and there's
Right.
a link also for what's called a Trello board. It's
Right.
like a big organized framework where you can log in and click on all of the
Uh-huh.
that have been happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's public
Is this
domain.
like what I watched something that you did during the pandemic? Is this similar to that?
It's what I did during the pandemic was the forerunner of this. So there was
Okay.
also a bunch of interviews, but this one going to be presentations, interviews, documentary
Mhm.
screenings, all kinds of events. Okay, and it's continuous.
Okay.
It goes for 10 hours each day
Ah,
for
Wow.
Saturday and Sunday, and there'll be 3 rooms open. So you
Okay.
can get about 50 hours of programming, you know, in.
Wow.
Obviously, you get to watch
Trello
everything.
board is like the map, and
Right.
you can go there and see all the lists of who's talking when, and just click, and then click on the Zoom link, and you're right in the room.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
And
and
that
all
Trello
that,
board actually has everything that happened in the last 3 convergences and
yeah.
before. So you can go back in history, look at, you can just search for
Okay.
someone's name and it'll tell you everything they did, you
Yeah.
know. So that's why
All
I say
right. Well,
it's like Hotel California. You can't leave once you come.
right. I'll spread the word to other people I know
Yeah.
about it.
Me too, actually. I be doing that. Well, Sailesh, thank you so very much. I'm going to end the recording now.